there. Thanks so much for joining the Aquarium Online Academy this morning. Now, I was acting like one of my favorite animals that lives here in this exhibit, the biggest exhibit we have at the Aquarium of the Pacific. It is our tropical reef, and it's 350,000 gallons of water. We have almost 1,000 animals in here. Oh, by the way, I'm Stacy. We're going to hang out together to learn about rays. Now, do you see any rays in here? Oh, haha, we planned that. We didn't plan that. Anyways, so we're going to be looking at rays. What makes a ray a ray? How is it different than other animals? And maybe what does it have that's similar to even some other ones? Okay, so I hope that you're ready to explore with me today. I would love to hear your thoughts or your questions. And all you need to do to participate is text us. We have a number right down there, 562-286-1838. So please feel free to text us to participate in our class this morning. And if you're watching this after the fact, we would still love for you to interact with us. All you need to do is email us instead. And that's also down there, live@lbaop.org. Okay, so let's take a look at a ray. What makes a ray a ray? Okay, here we go. This is a ray. Now, this one in particular is a kind of stingray. Not all rays sting. Did you know that? It's kind of interesting because I think a lot of us know of a stingray, but not all rays sting. That's why we're calling them rays in general. But this is a type of stingray. There's a lot of them out there that can sting. So let's take a look at these two pictures. Which one is the ray? That's pretty obvious, right? It's that one right there. So this right here is a stingray. It's called a cow-nose ray. And what's this over here? Not a ray. It's penguin. So let's take a look at the two different animals and try to compare and contrast. Actually, I really want to know what makes them different from each other because we know that a ray is not a penguin. So what makes them different? How did we know that this was a ray and it wasn't a penguin? Now, I think one of the most obvious things are these right here. Those are cute little feet. Those are really cute little penguin feet. Rays, no feet, right? Okay, so that's one thing that makes them a little different. So we know that a ray is not a penguin. What is something else that makes them different? So that way we know that they're different. They're not the same kind of animal. Well, a ray has these, right? These are the fins of the ray. Interesting. Well, this penguin here doesn't have fins, right? What does it have instead? It has wings. Now, here's the cool part. When they're swimming underwater, they actually use their wings to swim, and a ray uses their fins to swim, and they both flap underwater. So they actually kind of swim in a similar way. Now, I know it's hard to tell here because it's a photo, but I think that's really interesting. Even though they're such different animals, there's some stuff that they have in common. All right, so we know that this ray, is not a penguin. A penguin is a kind of bird, so a ray is definitely not a bird. But then what is a ray? Maybe let's take a look at another comparison. Okay, so we know for sure that a ray is not a bird. Do you think a ray is like us? No, rays are not like us, right? We are mammals, and we have to breathe air. That's just like one of the things that makes us a mammal. Everybody breathe in and breathe out. We get our oxygen from air that's around us. Rays don't do that. They have something else that helps them get oxygen from the water. What do rays have that help them get oxygen from water? Well, it's kind of similar to this one right here. These things. That's right, gills. So rays have gills. Their gills are right here. And this Garibaldi, which is a kind of fish, has gills too. And that's right here. So they both can breathe underwater using gills. It actually gets the oxygen. The gills are really cool. They get oxygen from water. So they are just in the water and they breathe in there. Pretty cool. Okay, what else is maybe the same or different between these two animals? Well, let's see. We did say that rays have fins, right? So rays have fins. Here's a fin here. Does this fish, Garibaldi, have fins? Absolutely. Look at that fin here. Okay, so there's that fin there. They have this tail fin right there. They have this fin over here, some down there, some over there. My goodness, this one has a ton of fins. So that's something they have in common. They have gills and they have fins. Interesting. What else do you notice? Well, because they have these fins, and something that we can't see that's actually inside their body, they have a skeleton. They're actually fish. Both of these animals are fish. Okay, so that's really interesting. They both have skeletons. They both have fins. They both have gills, so they can both breathe underwater. This is what makes them fish. But this ray is still different from this fish, right? One of the big differences I notice is that this ray is a different color than this fish, right? Really different colors. This one here, it has kind of a white belly. It kind of has some silvery, darker edges. What color is this fish? It's bright orange. So they're definitely a different color. Are they the same shape? Nope. They're different shapes too. So even though these are both fish, they're still a little bit different from each other. Now, again, that skeleton that we said we can't see, that's one of the biggest differences between this fish and this ray. This fish here is called a bony fish because its skeleton is made of harder bones. So it's a bony fish. This ray, on the other hand, its skeleton is actually soft and flexible. It's made of something called cartilage. Now, for those of you who have never heard that word before, think of the word, okay? Try to say it in your head or even out loud. Cartilage. You know, we have cartilage too. Our cartilage is pretty amazing. One of the places, and we can actually feel it, is here, your ear. Yeah, the top part of your ear. Do you feel it? It's kind of a little bit tough, but it's also bendy. That's what the ray's skeleton is made of. That's crazy, right? Our skeleton's different. If you feel your skeleton, okay, like my elbow is a good place to feel my skeleton. Ooh, my fingers are another great place to feel my skeleton. Those bones are hard. And that's the same thing with that bright orange fish. Its bones are hard. So that's one thing that makes them very, very different from each other. Rays have a cartilage skeleton, a very flexible skeleton. And that's what makes them a different type of fish. Now, that's kind of a neat thing because rays are actually closer related to sharks than they are to this bony fish, even though they're both fish. All right. We have Ms. Amador's class asking, how many species of rays are there? That's a really great question. There are a lot. So we see this one here. Jen actually showed us a picture. Oh, by the way, my friend Jen is controlling all the beautiful pictures that we have here. And my friend James is taking all of your questions too. So make sure that you send those questions in. The number's right down there. All right. So this is another type of ray. So we definitely know there's at least two types of rays. In fact, there's many, many more types of rays out there, about maybe 630 or so different kinds of rays. But I bet you there might even be more out in the ocean that we haven't even discovered yet because there's so much to discover in the ocean. We have only explored a very small part of how vast the ocean really is. So there might even be more species of rays for us to discover, which is really exciting. And then we have Yuretsi asking, are rays and penguins friends? Oh my gosh, I love that question. You know, I wish that they were, but rays and penguins don't really see each other all that much. Do you remember how we were talking about breathing? Well, penguins breathe what again? Air. That's right. They have to breathe the air that's around us. So penguins actually spend a lot of their time either up on the surface of the water or maybe even on land. They will dive into the water to catch their food, which are usually small fish. Some of them eat small krill, which is kind of like a little shrimp that floats around in the water too. So they'll dive into the water to find those. But a ray breathes water, right? So they breathe the oxygen in the water, and that means they don't have to be at the surface of the ocean. They usually are found towards the bottom of the ocean. And you know, that's a really interesting thing. Did you notice the shape of our ray? Let me get out of the way here. Look at that shape. It kind of looks like a pancake, doesn't it? Yeah, these rays are actually really kind of flat. They're wide this way and skinny this way. And that's a really, really important thing for a ray because a lot of rays actually like to rest on the ocean floor. So penguins tend to hang out at the surface of the ocean, and rays tend to be at the bottom of the ocean. Take a look at this one here. Did you even notice that ray? Now, it's a little bit easy to see because the color of the sand or rocks in this picture are a little bit lighter, but this is a very common way that you see lots of different rays, especially ones here in Southern California near Long Beach. So the rays are so flat that they can actually go to the bottom of the ocean. This is fun. Their wings go floof, 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 floof. And then the sand puffs up, and then the sand lands on their back. And you can even see this ray here, even though it's swimming, still has some sand on its back. So when the sand lands on it and it's laying on the ocean floor, it's actually hiding. It's a fantastic animal when it comes to hiding because of the shape of its body. Now, that's one really important thing about rays. They're all kind of flat this way, right? And wide that way. So that's one thing that all the rays have in common. That shark is a little bit different. Now, they are cousins. We talked about that cartilage skeleton, but sharks aren't flat. So that's one thing that makes sharks and rays a little bit different from each other. So very cool ray right there. Okay, what else makes a ray a ray? Maybe let's take a look at the bottom of a ray to discover a little bit more about what makes a ray a ray. Oh my goodness, look at the bottom of this ray. Isn't it adorable? Now the bottom of this ray here is a really fun place to explore because you can see where its eyes are, right? There's an eye there and there's an eye there. What is that? The mouth, of course, right? So the bottom of the ray is where the mouth is located. So it's on the bottom. Okay. What does that mean? Well, if the mouth is on the bottom, it means that the food comes from below it. And remember how we said rays like to hang out on the bottom of the ocean? That means if this is the ocean sand and this is a ray, its mouth is right here, so it's going to scoop up things that it finds in the sand. Rays love to eat things that are found in the sand, something like a shrimp or even like a clam. Now, wait a minute. Have any of you ever seen a clam or a mussel or an oyster? They all have a lot in common. They have shells, hard shells, in fact. And those hard shells are like this. It's almost like a shell sandwich. And then on the inside is actually a little squishy animal. And that squishy thing is the meat of the clam. And that's really what the ray wants to eat. But this hard shell is really tough, and it has to get through that shell in order to get the squishy thing that it wants to eat. Now, for us to get through, we have fingers, so we can open them up, and we also can cook it, and that will open it too. But rays don't have fingers, right? I don't see any fingers. And they don't cook either. So what do? Well, they crush the shell. This is wild. They can crush the shell even when it's a hard shell because of their very powerful mouth and their amazing teeth. Now, their teeth are so different than any other teeth that you have seen before. I'm going to have us go to our document camera. This is a really great way for us to see something up close. So this right here is a replica. So it's not a real jaw, it's made of plastic, but this is exactly what they look like. And these are my hands. Let's zoom in to get a close look. Can you believe that those are teeth? They're teeth. So they look pretty different from ours, right? If you smile real big, you can see your teeth if you look in a mirror. So our teeth look real different, and it's because we eat different food. We don't take a clam with the shells and try to bite it. Our teeth can't do that, but a ray's teeth can. So this is a bat ray's teeth, and the bat ray's teeth are designed for crushing. It's very, very flat, so that way when they bite on a hard shell, it cracks the shell open, and they can get the soft animal on the inside. Then they spit the shell out because the shell doesn't have the nutrients that they want. So they don't want to eat the shell. They just want to eat the squishy bit on the inside. So these flat teeth are perfect for something like that. If this ray had sharp teeth, then when it bit into a clam, those sharp teeth would all break. So these teeth are perfectly designed for the types of food that they eat. Excellent. Now we have a question from Alexa. Do rays sleep on the floor like sharks? Ah, good question, Alexa. So we know that they hide in the sand. We know that they find their food in the sand. But do they sleep in the sand as well? Well, why don't we take a look at another ray, and let's see if we think that it would sleep really well in the sand. I bet you, being a flat animal that's good at hiding, it would probably want to sleep in the sand, right? Because then you can hide in the sand and things can't find you as easily, which is really good when you want to stay safe, right? So yes, Alexa, they do sleep on the floor, and there are a lot of sharks that do that as well. So fantastic. All right, now this ray here is kind of a special ray. What makes this ray look different than the other rays that we've been noticing? Look at that nose. It's the cutest little nose. Yeah, this spotted eagle ray has a really interesting nose. That nose actually helps it to get some of the food that it likes to eat that might be buried into the sand. So that's a really helpful snoot that our ray friend here has. And it's called a spotted eagle ray. But wait a minute, look on its belly. I don't see any spots on the belly. I wonder, aha! Spots are on its back. So a lot of rays actually have different colors on its back than on its belly. Let's take a look here. On the back, we notice it's dark and it has those white spots, right? Excellent. But on the belly, it's very, very white. This is a very interesting thing that rays have that actually helps them camouflage or hide in their habitat even when they're swimming. So we know that they can bury themselves in sand to hide when they're laying on the floor, but they're not always on the ocean floor. Sometimes they swim around, and this is how they hide when they're swimming. If you were to be above the ray and you looked down and it was swimming in the water, that dark back actually blends in with the dark ocean floor. Look at how that is. If we didn't have a light on this ray, you probably wouldn't even see it, right? So that's great camouflage when you're looking from above, if you're up here looking down. What if you were underneath the ray and you were looking up? Did you notice how bright it is up here? This is from the sun or the lights that are above. And so it makes the surface of the ocean very bright. And that's why their bellies, being light colored, actually helps them blend in with the bright light coming from the sun above. So this type of camouflage, although it looks kind of funny being dark on the top and light on the bottom, is a very common thing you see in the ocean because there's a lot of animals that swim in the water in the ocean. It's called counter shading. That's right, it's called counter shading. That is when the top of it is dark and the bellies are light colored. Can you think of other animals that are like that too? Not even just rays, but other animals. Do you remember that first one that the first one that wasn't a ray that we looked at? That penguin? Yeah, penguins are counter shaded as well. They have a dark colored back and a light colored belly. There's so many ocean animals that are like that. Even a lot of different kinds of fish out there besides rays have this counter shading color. It's a very interesting thing you find in the ocean. All right. So we notice underneath that it has its mouth. What else is underneath its body? Oh my goodness, look at that mouth. So you can actually see the teeth right here. See how they're kind of flat, a little bit knobby? So that's the part that it uses for crushing those shells. Pretty cool. Okay, what else do you notice down there? The mouth and also these things. Those right there are their gills. That's right. So we said before that they get oxygen from the water using their gills. So the water goes into their either mouth or they have some special things on the top that we'll talk about in a little bit. Ah, here we go. Thanks, Jen. These special things right here. This is a hole in its head. But this hole has a purpose. It's called a spiracle. And this sucks water in. And then the water goes out of the gills. So it goes in the spiracle and it comes out of the gills. And when it goes out of the gills, the water goes through the gills so it can get the oxygen that it needs. Now, the reason why they have their gills on the bottom but their spiracles on the top and the water goes in here is because when they're sucking things in and they're buried in sand, well, they want to have these holes here just a little bit out of the sand so they're not sucking sand into their gills because that would be bad. Just like we don't want to put sand inside of our mouths and inside of our lungs, we don't want to have the sand inside of their gills too. And so we can see in this picture here, here's the eye. Just behind the eye is the spiracle. And it's not buried, even on this side. Okay, there's the eye there, and there's the spiracle there. So it's able to pull in that water with no sand, and it comes out of the gills on the bottom of it, and it can breathe. Pretty great. Now, we did have a question about how many different kinds of rays there are, and there are lots and lots of different kinds. We have been really focused, I think, on different kinds of stingrays. And one of my favorite kinds of stingrays is called a cow nose ray. A cow nose ray is a really interesting ray. It has a big thing that looks like a nose. Look at this. It looks like the nose of a cow, the same shape. That's how it got its name, cow nose ray. And we have them here at the aquarium. But cow nose rays are known to migrate, especially the ones that live in the Atlantic Ocean. So they will migrate for miles and miles and miles. They travel together when the seasons change. And some schools of migrating cow nose rays can be up to 10,000 rays. 10,000 of them. Can you even imagine having that many rays all together? And they swim together for safety. Now, these rays are also really, really energetic and acrobatic. They can completely jump out of the water if they want to. And here at the aquarium, when we feed our cow nose rays, well, it can always get pretty interesting. When we feed our cow nose rays, the person who's feeding them has to expect to get a little bit splashed. So we have trained the cow nose rays here at the aquarium to come to a spot in their exhibit. This is a very big exhibit, but they go to this spot when it's time to feed. And they have this ramp that they swim up, and we will feed them by taking food using those red tongs that you see there and putting it under their faces. Remember, that's where their mouth is, right? And so we're able to feed all of the different rays, but again, they're very energetic, very acrobatic. So the person who's usually feeding is also going to get completely soaked by, oh, there we go. There's a great example of those splashy rays. Very cool. So it is definitely neat to see some of the animals that we have here at the aquarium, but I want to share with you the biggest ray out there. The biggest ray is actually not a stingray. It's called a manta ray. And a manta ray doesn't have a sting. The sting is only used for defense, but this manta ray is so big, it doesn't really need that same kind of defense. Now, this is an interesting ray because it is the biggest one out there, and it can be 20 feet from wingtip to wingtip, so 20 feet across. And it is known to glide in the water just as you saw right there. Now, this is not a manta ray. This is actually a very, very big stingray. It's actually one of my favorite animals here at the aquarium, a reticulate whiptail ray. So that manta ray is the one that we saw there was actually feeding because it lives a different life. So this one here you see is down near the sand, right? This one's mouth is underneath it. It's down near the sand, and it feeds off the sand. But the manta ray, its mouth is a little bit more forward in front of its face. And when it feeds, it does that big loop-de-loop. Let's see if we can bring that back again. Here we go. You see how it swims, and it does like a backflip. And that open mouth that you see right there is actually bringing in lots and lots of little things that live in the ocean water. It's eating microscopic plankton. Now, this is the cool thing. Its gills actually have a part of it that rakes out all the particles of food. They're called gill rakers. And so it collects the food. When they close their mouth, they can swallow, and all that food goes into their bellies. So those manta rays actually feed by holding their mouth open, and swimming and catching all the food that way. So they have a different way of feeding. But it's a really important thing. When you're so big, you need a lot of food. And plankton, where they live, you can usually find lots and lots and lots of it. You can actually even see all the little particles there of the plankton and bubbles. All right, we have Ms. Amador's class asking, what is a group of rays called? Ooh, that's a good question. It's called a fever. Huh, interesting. I learned something new too. My friend James actually gave us that answer. Thanks, James. So, yeah, it's called a fever. All right. So we've talked about a couple of different types of rays that are pretty amazing out there in the ocean. They have a different lifestyle, but they're all rays. But, you know, rays actually need our help too, because there's a lot of rays out there that are endangered, or they're in danger of being captured by something called bycatch. Sometimes, you know, we like to eat seafood, and sometimes the way we catch seafood catches not just the fish that we want to eat, but other things too. And that's how rays sometimes get caught. So rays kind of have a little bit of a challenge out there. So what can we do to help rays in the ocean? Well, one of the things we can do is, if you eat seafood, it's a really good source of protein. I like to eat seafood too. We want to make sure that it is caught in a way that's called sustainable. That means that it's caught in a way that doesn't hurt the other animals that live near that fish, and it doesn't hurt their habitat either. And it also doesn't take too many of them out of the ocean. So if you want to help our rays out there, you can ask your parents to try to find sustainable seafood. And a good way to know if it's sustainable is to pick something that is from the United States. So it's fished in the United States, or it's farmed in the United States. It's usually a very good choice. And another thing that we can do that you can really help me with is to make sure that people know that rays exist, because I think rays are often overlooked. Their shark cousins tend to get all the glory. So we want to make sure that everybody knows rays exist in the world. They're really, really important, and we want to make sure that they stay out there in the ocean. Now, I want to say thank you all so much for joining us today for our Aquarium Online Academy. If you do have more questions, please feel free to email us at live@lbaop.org. Thanks again. Bye from the aquarium.